Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Friday, July 19th, 2024. Fire potential impacts for today include another round of showers and thunderstorms across much of the same areas as we saw yesterday, although the coverage will be less and storms may have a bit less moisture in them. On Saturday, we see some breezy winds move into eastern Idaho and portions of northern Utah. These are breezy, pretty light actually, but we're highlighting them and dry air mass there as well, with some continuing thunderstorms over mainly southern Nevada, southeast Nevada, and southern Utah. And then on Sunday, some isolated storms continue across eastern, southeast Nevada, and southern Utah, with some breezy winds there in northern Utah. Yesterday was a fairly active day for thunderstorms over much of central and eastern Nevada and across the state of Utah into just far southern Idaho. Some of these storms did have a little bit of higher precip amounts right in the core. We can see these dots with the green here, between a half an inch and an inch of precip with some of those storms. Fire activity for the past 24 hours shows that we had 21 new fires for 57 acres and large fire growth of 193 acres. Most of that initial attack was caused by the lightning. Precip for the past 7 days is shown on the left. We can see we have seen precip over Utah and mainly eastern Nevada and up into southeast Idaho and western Wyoming. Still some dry pockets out there, central and western Idaho, northwest Nevada, even southern Nevada, and the northern Wasatch Front. ERCs for today still show very high values across the central Idaho mountains and a few pockets of over 97th percentile in northern Utah and far southwest Utah. Otherwise, kind of a mixed bag with some lower values where we've seen recent precipitation. Closer look at ERCs over southwest Idaho, showing those values above average for the time of year around the 90th percentile, and those should stay there for the forecast period. Further south over northern Ely, we can see the values have decreased from the highs last week and are sitting about the 80th percentile, which is still above normal for the time of year. This morning satellite imagery shows a high pressure still remaining in place over the southern Great Basin, continuing to allow some moisture to develop into thunderstorms in the afternoon. This high pressure will start to move a little bit further westward, which will kind of shut off the moisture a bit coming into Utah. Okay, for today, again, moisture underneath the ridge will allow thunderstorms to develop this afternoon in many of the same areas as yesterday. No high risk for those thunderstorms as they've been happening each day, and the atmosphere is not as dry as it was in the beginning of this event. Closer look at where the thunderstorms will develop. Again, eastern Nevada, over the central Nevada mountains and across much of Utah, particularly the higher elevations. May see a storm or two up in the central Idaho mountains, but still pretty isolated up there, and also western Wyoming. Relative humidities are higher over the higher elevations where those storms have been occurring, with drier values over southwest Idaho and northern Nevada. On Saturday, the ridge shifts a bit to the east or to the west, bringing some really hot temperatures to the western half of the basin. Moisture still in place over southern Utah will allow for storms to develop there once again tomorrow. No high risk. Precipitation on Saturday will be more limited to just the higher elevations of mainly southern Utah, with a few isolated storms over central Nevada, but drying elsewhere. Wind gusts are shown here on the right. A little bit breezy over eastern Idaho and portions of northern and central Utah. On Sunday, the ridge remains in place, strengthening a little bit further west, even over Nevada. There will still be a little bit of moisture underneath the ridge here for some isolated storms, but the main story here is very, very hot across the north. Precip here on Sunday shown across central Nevada with some storms still over the southern Utah mountains and maybe over the northern Utah mountains, an isolated storm here or there as well. And then the heat, 107 in Boise on Sunday, 103 in Reno, so pretty warm across the north. 3-day precip totals are shown here. Again, today's probably the biggest day, most widespread day for storms across the higher elevations and into Nevada, and then decreasing a bit across the north with continued storms on Saturday into Sunday in southern Utah. On Monday, we start to see a trough developing off the coast here, the Pacific coast, with the ridge a little still centered over the west. This will begin to bring in some gusty winds to the Pacific Northwest, but not too much into the basin just yet. A little bit of moisture does scooch northward, however, behind the center of this ridge. That will kick off some isolated storms over the central Idaho mountains, so we do have high risk for an increase in some thunderstorm activity up there on Monday. On Tuesday, that trough moves a little bit further eastward, but allowing the ridge to strengthen and remain in place on Tuesday. Maybe some lingering isolated storms here or there. On Wednesday, much the same story. Fairly dry, still hot, isolated storms underneath the ridge. And then Thursday, as that low pressure moves across southern Canada, we do see some moisture being drawn back up into the Great Basin with the ridge being pushed a little bit further to the east. So we should see some moisture returning back to the Great Basin, a little bit more moisture anyway, Thursday and then into Friday. 7-day precip totals shown here do show a little bit of an enhanced precipitation in the extended across the south, and that is as that moisture returns back to the basin Thursday into Friday of next week, as the ridge gets shifted a little bit eastward. The extended forecast for July 26th through the 1st calls for continued above normal temperatures, although maybe not as hot as we're seeing right now, hopefully, and above normal chances for precip across the northern half of the area. This concludes today's fire potential briefing. Please check back tomorrow for the latest updates.